Welcome to another episode of Game Boy Roulette, where we take a look at randomly chosen games from the Game Boy library.
Klax, it is the 90s, baby! That's not a lie. This game was released in 1990, which by my calculations was in fact a part of the 90s. Atari, looking to get a major hit out in the early 90s, as their relevancy faded against the NES, Genesis, and soon-to-be-released Super Nintendo, threw together a puzzle game. And I really mean threw it together. Klax was reportedly developed in only a few weeks, but it was a big hit in Japanese arcades, which of course meant it ended up getting ported to basically everything that could play games in the 90s. And if you're wondering why I keep bringing the 90s up, it's because the load-in screen of the game features the iconic tagline, "It is the 90s and there is time for Klax." And frankly, I don't know why video games kept trying to have stories after that masterclass of narrative. All of that is well and good, but something is concerning to me about this port. See, Klax was a very fun color matching game, but while the game did get a separate Game Boy Color port, the one we're looking at today is for the Game Boy, meaning black, white, and gray. It's certainly possible to differentiate colors on the Game Boy, or to use patterns, but it's also just as easy to screw it up terribly. Plus, Klax had a lot of fun sound effects, and even a bit of 3D, which the Game Boy can again be very hit or miss with. I think there's a lot of potential for this to be a fun port of a fun puzzle game, but there's an equally likely chance that the game is just not gonna work. It is the 90s, and there is time for box art. I love how weird the hand looks, the graffiti font, the use of colors. It really does feel like the 90s through and through. I have no idea why they went with that for the theming of the game, but I'm not gonna complain. In fact, I'm gonna say it one more time. It is the 90s, and there is time for Klax! Klax. Say it, game. Say it, you coward, I'm begging you. Aw, it didn't say it. Fine, I'll say it. It is the 90s, and there is time for Klax. Alright, let's Klax all over the place. Complete 3 Klaxes to advance to the next wave. Klax is just 3 of the same thing in a row. Klax is 3 tiles. Oh, yeah, it just says it right there. Looks Klaxy. Ooh. A bit slow. So the gimmick with Klax is you have to catch these lines these boxes as they come down, and form them together into lines. That blinking one, I believe, is I think that might be a wild card. In the original game, it's different colors. Here, they're going with different patterns, and, well, the good news is the patterns are very readable. Sorry. You can also do Klaxes diagonally, look. Yeah. I am already noticing a bit of an issue. Klax was really, it had a lot of life, it had good animation, and it had a lot of color. That's what I'm looking for, a lot of color. And without it, unfortunately, it's just not as good right now. It's also definitely slower. Klax works best when it's really fast and frenetic. Right, you can hold down to speed them up, and you can hold a bunch of Klaxes at once. Woohoo! We did it. There's no sound effects here either. Klax was best known for its sound effects, and this game does not have that. Oh man, this is so slow. I do not remember the original Klax being this slow. It is the 90s, and Klax is so slow. Like, Klax in general is a fun puzzle game, but so far I'm not sold on this one. It's a little missing stuff. Actually, no, you know what? It's a lot missing stuff. Klax without the color is scarcely Klax at all. That's what I wanted to say on my tombstone. You kind of need the color for Klax to be fun. Because without it, the patterns just are boring. Which is a shame, because like I said, I really like Klax. It's a fun game. It's a solid idea for a puzzle. The sound effects are great, which are completely missing from this one. Which might be the biggest sin of all. This is a total bare bones port. This is too slow. I'm going to bump up the level. Level 11. We're throwing Klax to the wind. Make a big X on this wave for secret warp. Oh, really? Okay, so when they're moving faster, that's definitely looking better. Man, the tiles are coming so slow, too. It is the 90s, and they've babyfied Klax. But, man, I'm really disappointed in this. It's not awful by any means. I'm still, moving around, able to do stuff. I think the animation's a little underwhelming, but not terrible. But the problem is, Klax it's a very high energy and fun and kind of quirky game. And they've managed to capture absolutely none of that. Klax really needs color. I don't think color is... God, how do I even put this? Because it's going to sound very ridiculous. We've seen from the Game Boy, color is not necessary in gaming. You can get away with black and white and gray and patterns. But in this case, I'm really missing it. Klax is made by being a very bright, colorful... Well, I know I keep joking about it, but like the 90s. The 90s were a very colorful time. And Klax made good use of that. Klax understood that it was the 90s and there is time for Klax. I heard that somewhere. It's also not helping that this is not going that fast. Like, in the normal game, you'd have a ton of tiles coming at you. This one, not as much. Yeah, like there's these long gaps between tiles. Uh-oh. Klax, fail. Klax. All the Klaxes are dying. But we have to wait. God, we have to wait. That's it? Yeah, this is... hate to say it, this is a botched port. Not god-awful by any means. But it's missing everything that made Klax fun. Yeah, if you're gonna play Klax, stick to any of the other versions. Ideally, if you can find the arcade version, that one has all the sound effects, great color. It is the 90s, there's time for Klax intro. Everything. But this one, yeah, Game Boy did puzzle games really well, but in the greatest tragedy of the modern era, Klax was not one of them. I have tragic news for everyone. The 90s have died. I'm a big believer that the technical capabilities of a system do not hold back the quality of its games. Heck, I suppose that's why I'm such a big fan of the Game Boy in the first place. But in this case, yeah, I have to admit, the limitations of the Game Boy are what held Klax back from being as fun as the other versions of the game. Klax's gameplay needs to have an ever-growing level of chaos, with bright colors and funny sound effects, and a general energy to it to make it stand out among other puzzle games. So without all of that, with basic patterns replacing the colors, with the sound effects stripped down, and with the gameplay slowed significantly, it leads to a subpar Klax experience. Now the thing is, all of the Game Boy's limitations could have been overcome. We've seen games really push what the system was capable of, but instead, they went in the worst possible direction for Klax. Bare bones. It's like they didn't even attempt to bring out the best in this game, instead doing the minimum amount to make the game functional before calling it a day. Beyond the aesthetics, the slowing down of gameplay was the biggest disappointment, as it destroyed the more frantic nature of Klax, making it dull. Yeah, in fact, that's a good word to sum up this whole game. Dull. Dull graphics, dull gameplay, dull sound, dull everything. And if 90s is the perfect word to describe Klax, then dull is the perfect word to not describe it. It's a shame that this game is a disappointment because I am a huge fan of Klax. I definitely recommend checking the game out, but avoid this Game Boy port. Pretty much any other system gives you the true Klax experience. It didn't even have the iconic title screen. Man, after I talked it up so much too. And that's all for another episode of Game Boy Roulette. Make sure to like the video, comment, and subscribe to follow the series as we continue to dig through the Game Boy vault. I'm Brian J, and I'll see you next time.